me a co-host in return.
I'll do that.
Just as a backup, I'm here.
I'll make you a co-host. Let me start the captions. Okay, Chanel, it looks like we have everyone's coming into the regular meeting.
Thank you. This is Community Board 2 Manhattan, the 1 June meeting for this year. Tonight is of the Landmarks Committee, excuse me. We have one application and one item tonight. I will wait until we get to the application to do the normal discussion about landmarks items. The first one for 18 Fifth Avenue is a recommendation that's being sought from the Department of Transportation concerning a subsurface system to melt snow. It's not a landmark item. However, it is a landmark building, and sort of by default, we're the best committee to make the recommendation to the board. It will come in the nature of a either objection or no objection, rather than the usual type resolution. If you'll prepare 16 Fifth Avenue, Eugene, I'll read the application. 16 Fifth Avenue, an application to DOT for revocable consent to construct, maintain, and use a subsurface snow melt system in front of the building. And
I do not see John Carbone, who is the listed presenter for 16 Fifth Avenue. So if you are with 16 Fifth Avenue, please use the raise hand function, and I can elevate you to be a presenter. Chenault, I do not see the presenters for 16th Avenue yet.
Okay, after that, is a Canal Street presenter here?
Yes, I see them. I can elevate them.
Again, then while you do this, the one regular landmark presentation we have this evening is for 277 Canal Street. We'll hear the presentation, have comments and questions from the committee, from members of the board, and then from the public. And I would ask that the presenter, one thing I've noticed that there is a great, just the quantity of pages, a great deal of background versus the project itself. What we're really concerned with is what the building looks like in context. I'm sure that will all come clear. The important thing about this application is that we're considering the landmark aspect of it, as we do with all. That means that elsewhere, such things as the impact on the community, anything that could be considered quality of life, and similar kinds of things will be dealt with elsewhere. And if one has a question or comments or concerns about these things, they should be directed to the community board office, and you'll be even put in touch with either a committee of the board or with an agency of the city. Otherwise, everything is a perfectly normal application. It's just that this unusual situation arises. I'll read the application, and I would ask that the presenter correct me if anything seems amiss about the way it's worded. It's been considerably reduced from the original. 277 Canal Street and 418, 422 Broadway. Application to construct a non-story addition and a penthouse with mechanical equipment above an existing 3-story building to restore its facade and to install new windows. When you're ready to begin.
Hi, this is Albert LeBose. I'm one of the principals of the owners. There you go. Very good. Well, thank you for having us for this meeting. I think we're waiting to add somebody as a presenter, by the way. Her name is Erin Ruley.
I believe
If
she's
I'm
somebody-
in, Albert. Yep, I'm
She's
here.
in? Okay, very good.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll start. Can we get the slides back up?
Yes, you should be able to share your desktop or your application.
Claire Watson is sharing. Yeah.
Ah, very good. Well, we're excited to present before the Community Board and the Landmarks Commission this building. First one coming out of rezoning. There'll be 100 units. It's a mixed-use building, retail on the ground, 100 units in total, 25 of which are going to be for affordable housing, which is desperately needed in this community. Could you go to the next slide? So this is the building in its current state. It's in the northeast corner of Canal and Broadway. It's been owned by my family since 2001. And the state of the building, the way it is right now, is really not something we're proud of as preservationists. It exists, that's pretty much the way the state of the building existed when the building was included in the Soho extension back, I think, in 2009 or 2010. So once you look at this building, this has been included in the Soho extension. You would have to, there's an argument to say, that doesn't look like a typical Soho building. Doesn't look like a typical cast iron Soho building. This is something, and it's not even unique to Soho. This is something you would see maybe in Upper Broadway and Upper West Side, or maybe on Nostrand Avenue in Brooklyn. But certainly not, it's not a typical Soho building. So, which makes this an ideal candidate for us to do our project and presentation. Let's go on to the next slide. So by way of background, United American Land is a family business. We've been based in Soho for over 35 years. And we personally, my brothers and I, 2 brothers and myself, personally involved in all aspects of the business. We're not big developers, we're a family business. We don't take equity, we don't have institutions. We still do things by handshake. And when we approach things, we approach these developments as neighbors, not as developers. Let's go to the next slide. And here's just some of the projects we're involved in Soho. When 321, 323 Canal Street, where we did a major renovation, took down the brick wall, the whole brick wall, and had to go ahead and restore it. And we received the Lucy Moses Award for that. We also did a gut rehab and adaptive use of 53 Howard or 309 Canal Street, where La Mercerie is on the ground floor and we have residential units above. 430 West Broadway, between Prince and Spring, it's where our office used to be. We're in the middle of a 60,000 square foot office or 50,000 square foot boutique office building. Where there'll be retail on the ground and an office above, which was approved by the Landmarks Commission and also designed by Morris Adjemi, who designed our building that we're talking about now. Next slide. So preservation is in our ethos. This is what we do. We do these jobs. They're very, very rewarding, but very, very difficult. 503 Fulton Street in Brooklyn is a designated landmark. Did a 250,000 square foot building. And we did a major gut renovation, adaptive reuse. We have major retailers of H&M, Old Navy's, Nordstrom Rack, and TJ Maxx. And the upper floors are residential. 33 Union Square. It's a historic landmark looking at Union Square. It happens to be where Andy Warhol got shot. That's one of his. That was one of his factories. At 55 Reed Street was a major cast iron restoration that on the corner of Reed and Broadway. That we also received a Lucy Moses Award for the restoration. Next slide. So my family has a very large interest on Canal Street. And we all know the history of Canal Street, right? The 70s and 80s is where you went to get your electronics, your hardware, your plastics. Then came the 90s when the Asian community started moving in and started selling basically knockoffs, Gucci bags, Fendi bags, Prada, whatever it is. And then going into the aughts. And then until recently, all the Asian merchants have moved off. Now all the peddlers are really on Canal Street on the street selling all those knockoffs, but that's a whole different story. So Canal Street is in the middle of transition. So we had a lot of vacancies that we started before COVID and into COVID. We said, hey, we have these vacancies here and we have a chance to change this neighborhood and give back to the neighborhood. So we align ourselves with other owners on the block, and we partnered up with a group called Wall Play. And their mission was to activate the retail stores and put art uses, art galleries, and studios, pop-ups, designers. And by the way, we didn't charge any rent. The whole point was to activate these empty spaces during COVID and even before COVID, so we could start transitioning Canal Street into, let's say, the next generation of what Canal Street should be. And finally, what we had as a result of that, we have several tenants, design tenants, clothing tenants, and art tenants signing up for not long-term leases, but 2 or 3 or 4 year leases. So it's really we have a very big incentive to develop this corner, and maybe it could be a further catalyst for change on Canal Street. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the building. And as we looked at, as I said before, it didn't look like to us a typical Soho building. So we were considering, how do we approach this when you have all these air rights? Do we go ahead and knock down the building and make the case the building is not, it should not have been in a district to begin with? But that's not the way we like to do things. We like to do things the hard way because it's more interesting. So we decided to say, let's preserve and restore the base of the building, the first 3 floors of the original building, and then add on this beautiful addition that Morris designed. And to us, by preserving this building, it's better from a preservation standpoint and a sustainability standpoint. It makes, of course, for a much more interesting building. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to either Morris or Erin Ruley.
I think, yeah.
Okay, Erin. Okay.
I think it's
Erin,
me.
Go ahead, Erin.
Aaron and then me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Erin Ruley from Higgins and Quaysbarth to talk about the history of this building and Soho.
So good evening, Erin Ruley, Higgins, Quaysbarth and Partners. Chenault, I hear you. I think, what we're about to share with you is not the standard LPC application. You don't see many of these. So hopefully you'll bear with me through a little bit of the appropriateness
Right. I'm sorry, could I ask one thing?
Yes.
We've gotten a revised application of version, which we appreciate. Could you point out as you go any meaningful changes from
Changes. Yes, we will.
Thank
We
you
will for
that.
sure.
Some people have
Mhm.
studied the other one and not this one. Thank you.
Right. I think that, Chanel, I think the biggest change from the last version that we submitted is that the storefront plans were a little further developed in this one. Landmarks had requested us to structure the storefront application as, or the storefront component as a master plan, so that there is continuity going forward. And so that's really what we've done. There isn't any real specific design changes, but we'll point it out as we go.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to take you through some of the history and context for the proposal and why we think this is appropriate for this site. And then Morris will share with you the details of the design. I think Albert gave you the vital stats on the building: 3 stories, northeast corner of Canal and Broadway. It was originally constructed in 1927, 28. And designed by David Oltarsh. It was a mixed-use building, so it had a movie theater, ground floor storefronts, retail, and then a commercial building, a commercial offices above that. And on the left is the district map. So you can see it's part of the extension, which was designated in 2010, which really just grabbed those fringe areas that hadn't been included in the original 1973 district, but there was a large composition of late 19th and early 20th century buildings that got swept up as part of that addition of that expansion. Claire, could we go back one slide to the proposal? So I just want to clarify. So here we see the proposal. It is 9-story plus a penthouse addition to the existing building. And this is a very straightforward approach. So it expands the historic building through a shared DNA. So the historic building is restored and forms the base of this new composition. And using the fabric or the DNA of the existing building to establish the materiality and rhythm, everything that's happening up above. And so the appropriateness is really rooted in a few basic ideas. First, that the building is unique in the district. And we'll go through why that's the case, and that the site embodies a specific history of change that we think might provide an opportunity to do something creative on this site. The building is outside of the character-defining phases of the district's development, but as Albert was explaining, it nonetheless conveys this story of the evolution of the district, and the intent here is for the new design to really further that story. The expansion follows a model of commercial building evolution that we see in the city historically, but most significantly along Broadway in the historic district. So we have a couple of examples where something comparable has occurred. And then finally, the composition is really in the character of Broadway and their tall masonry buildings of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Next slide. Sure, we can go to the next one. And then just really quickly, the proposals in the context of other projects that LPC has approved previously. So these are examples, just a few examples of approvals at the street wall or with minimal setbacks. So this isn't something new for the commission to deal with, and they've certainly considered projects like this in the past. And while the specifics of each of the cases is inherent to the building and their related sites, the thing that's in common, I think, with all of the approvals is that sort of compositional character, the layering of the old and the new. And we think that that's what's achieved in our proposal today. Next slide. So just jumping into the history, the site has had seen a significant history of change. Here is the earliest generation of buildings on the site. They were federal period. And this is an early view looking north on Broadway. Our site is at the center, and it's showing that low line of buildings all along Broadway as it moves north. Next slide. In the 1860s, the earlier federal period buildings were demolished and replaced with a new 4-story Italian 8-store and loft building. And you can see it in along the bottom of the slide. The overall streetscape from the 1860s, and it's showing that consistency and scale with the evolving commercial character of Broadway. So you're shifting from that early federal period scale to the commercial scale of the store and loft buildings of the mid to late 19th century. Next slide. The site was cleared in 1913 due to the construction of the Broadway subway under the site. So this site marks the juncture of the subway coming, the BRT coming from Manhattan Bridge and intersecting with the Broadway line. And that all happens on this site under the building. So on the left, we see a 1920s view, and there are a couple in 1919, a taxpayer, and there are a couple of sheds on the site, but we see the later buildings rising along Broadway in that view on the top left. So that last generation of tall buildings that's constructed on Broadway. So again, that evolving scale. So the site's not further developed until 1927 when the existing building was constructed, and we see that on the top right. And in the maps below, you can see the subway, that sort of dotted line moving through the site is the subway line right under the building. Next slide. So here's the theater. The building, once it was right after construction, it was originally known as the Major Theater. And this is a great view along Canal Street, showing that sort of vibrant theater and retail presence on Canal Street. And at the top right is the original appearance of the theater, which is no longer extant. And then a couple of views from the tax photo, so a few decades after the completion of the building. Slide. Great. So we've looked at the evolution of the site itself, but that also corresponds to this broader evolution of the district. So just stepping back to look at the district as a whole and how 277 Canal fits into that context. The district is characterized by three primary phases of development: the early to mid 19th century row houses, so federal period, Greek Revival, Italianate, primarily 2.5 to 4 stories. Those buildings were later converted for commercial use primarily, and then sometimes expanded. But this is that first legible layer of Soho architectural history. Then in the mid 19th century, the store and loft buildings. So primarily 5 and 6 stories, cast iron and masonry. These are the namesake buildings for the Soho cast iron district. And then finally, the late 19th, early 20th century buildings, tall masonry buildings ranging from 9 to 12 stories, primarily located along Broadway. So each of these phases follows a identifiable pattern defined by a specific height and expression. So there's a consistency to each phase that creates this sort of collection of buildings within the district. And this is distinct from what's happening at 277 Canal. Next slide. So following that last phase of development in the district, there was a period of stasis or maybe decline. What's happening at that time are major infrastructure and transportation changes. That's when our site is cleared, and there's little development that happens over that period. 277 Canal is the last building constructed in the district that is given a style designation. So as you know, the way that landmarks confers contributing and non-contributing status in the district is to give a style designation. And so 277 is the latest of those buildings. The designation report notes that the building is evocative of the changes taking place in the district related to transportation improvements and mass entertainment. And there's only one other entry in the designation report that has a comparable description, and that is the building we see on the right, which is 15-story Art Deco building at 270 Lafayette Street. So I think what we're seeing here is this generation of late commercial buildings that weren't defined by a specific style or a specific height, unlike the earlier phases. There's really a range that evolved in that period. Next slide. Oh, great. So here's the scope of proposed restoration work. And the intent here is really to bring back the expression of the building and street level experience, which due to unsympathetic alterations has really been diminished over time. So restoring the materiality and rhythm of the piers. The base of the building is terracotta. It's all been either schmutzed or clad over. And in some cases, the terracotta has been removed. So reinstating that reading at the base and the regular rhythm of it, new storefronts at the ground floor, again, tying back into all of UAL's efforts along Canal Street. And on the upper floors, reestablishing the tripartite window configuration of the historic windows. And as you can see on the right, the marquee, there's an existing marquee. It's been clad over, but it's the original marquee for the building, the structure is there. So that will be reclad as the new residential entry. And then there is a whole host of masonry issues, terracotta, details that have been lost, the terracotta has been coated, and brick masonry repairs that are necessary. So that'll all be accomplished as part of this. Next slide. Here are just a few of those details. You can see the terracotta's been, this is all coated on the top left, and on the bottom left, detailed and that have been stripped away, and there's been displacement of the masonry units. Brick has been repointed in a incompatible way, so that will all be addressed as part of the restorative work. And then at the bottom right is the existing marquee. So there's a slightly smaller structure underneath that aluminum cladding. Next slide. Great. So here you can see the existing windows there, maybe a contemporary take on what was there historically. And you can also see it's a pretty good shot of the terracotta deterioration and coating up at the string course at the top of the building. On the right gives you a good sense. This is along Broadway where the subway station is, subway entry. It gives you a good sense of what's happened to the piers over time, just being overclad and parged. And so reinstating all of that reading as part of it. Morris will get into this a little bit further, but the subway entry is part of the project, and there's the anticipation of a sort of public art installation within that as part of the overall project. Next slide. Great. So then just sort of stepping back and moving beyond the site itself, we've been thinking about comparable small-scale commercial buildings and how they've expanded historically. There are two examples on Broadway, as I'd mentioned, where this has happened. Each is on a corner site. First, the 525 Broadway, which is on the screen. This was originally constructed in 1920 and started its life as a one-story bank building. And then a few years later, it was expanded by 7 stories. And so the existing building is on the right. You can see you see the brick base. A second story was added as a transitional story to mediate between the base and the shaft of the building above, the planar brick facade above, and then the arched windows that terminate each of the paired bays of windows in the shaft of the building. Next slide. And then moving 1 block to the north, 565 Broadway, which was originally constructed as a 5-story store and loft building, Tuckahoe marble. And then by the 1890s, it was expanded by 4 stories. And so here, the addition is executed in brick. The cornice is stripped away, and there's a shift in the materiality. There's also a transition in the style of the lintels in that. So this subtle design distinction, a simple attic story and cornice above. So in both of these examples, you're seeing subtle distinctions in materiality and articulation between the original section of the building and the addition. And this approach has really sort of informed our perspective on 277. Next slide. This kind of expansion happens throughout the city, and it happens in a broad range of periods and at varying scales. So here are just 3 examples: 55 Wall Street, 17 John, which was a taxpayer and was expanded by 13 stories. And there you can see it's another one of those transitional stories between the original building and the addition. And then finally, General Motors, which is originally constructed as a colonnaded base with a 23-story addition above. Next slide. So at the far right is our proposal in the context of Broadway. And so you can see how this fits into the scale and character of the late 19th and early 20th century buildings along Broadway. The street wall is 148 feet. And so that puts us sort of in the middle range of the buildings of that phase of development along Broadway. And it's at least 20 feet lower than the tallest of the historic buildings. Next slide. And so finally, we looked at those tall building examples to understand sort of their compositional characteristics, really trying to understand sort of the formal language of the buildings. And there are a few characteristics that sort of weave through all of the buildings, the tripartite composition, so the base, shaft, and capital, the use of major and minor string courses to mediate the horizontal and vertical emphasis of the buildings, and then the variation in the window expression and the window groupings. And so here, 599 Broadway, 12-story street wall, 2-story base, a transitional floor where it's accentuated by or distinguished by its window surrounds, the shaft, and then the 2-story crown that's differentiated from the lower section of the building. Next slide. And then 443 Broome Street. So again, a 12-story street wall, a tall 2-story base with a transitional floor between, and then and the shaft, and then a very ornamental 2-story crown set off by ornament and a cornice. And so I think now Morris will walk you through how this is all sort of pulled together and realized in our proposal.
Hello, good evening, and thank you. Morris Adjemi from Morris Adjemi Architects. I'd like to thank the Landmarks Committee and Community Board and the members who are on this call. I'd like to also thank Albert for his dedication to quality buildings and his passion for restoration and hiring us for this project, and also Aaron for the complete analysis and the work at Higgs at Quaysbarth in preparation for this design. We believe that this is a very unique site in the district, as Aaron mentioned, and we embrace the idea of a vertical expansion, which we think is appropriate based on the existing building, historic examples, which were just outlined, as well as historic expansions at 525 and 565 Broadway, as well as the context. I'm going to go through the overall organization of the project, show you some views, then look at materials, details, and then the streetscapes showing the building in context. Starting here, much as Aaron showed in the previous analyses of the tripartite division of the buildings, we're looking at the existing building. First, we're going to do a thorough restoration of the brick and terracotta, installing new windows that match the historic windows there, and then do a sensitive entrance to the subway as well, which we'll talk about. But the existing building sets up the rhythm for the building above, as you can see, the 3 parts of that building. And then we're introducing a special course at the cornice of the existing building with a new terracotta element that mimics that cornice, but also separates it from the proposed addition. Then we are creating a sub-base identified as B1 between the existing building and the new shaft. And then those windows are organized in a group of 3, as you see below, and then a major statement with a cornice and attic story at the top of the building, which is rendered in completely in terracotta, and the materials below are brick with a sawtooth pattern, which I'll show you, which comes from the tympanum of the major window entrance you see on the east end of the building, as well as a bronze tone metal used for the windows and the lintels between the floors. In this way, we express the verticality of the structure, much as you saw in the examples previously. We can go to the next slide. And here you see the building in 3 dimensions and the relationship to the context. And you'll see from the street views that will streetscape views that will show you it's in harmony with the corner buildings and the height you see along Broadway. And just one last thing, where the ground floor will be maintained for retail, commercial purposes, and all of the floors above will be residential, with the entrance on Canal on the east side of the building, where the previous entrance to the theater was. And here's a view looking east on Canal. You see the building in context. And here, the same view, but looking west on Canal. And then 2 more views, one looking south on Broadway. You see the building on the left, the existing building at the base, and then the new proposal above with the crown of terracotta. And then here, we pulled out the materials and showing some of the details. Working from the top this time, you see the terracotta with the scalloped sections for the pilasters and the smaller elements between the windows, which draws on some of the detailing from the base of the building. And then this sawtooth pattern, which you can see in the lower right for the window pattern in the tympanum of that portion. And then the metal, bronze tone metal on the windows above in the shaft of the building. Here's some of the materials that I mentioned, just images. The aluminum is the screening at the roof, and then the brick, terracotta, and bronze for the shaft of the building. The lower section is a portion of the existing brick that will be repointed and cleaned up. That's to give you a sense of the color. And we're looking at a color brick for the proposal that complements the lower brick below, and cleaning up the terracotta and the granite, which is at the base of the building. Here are 3 projects that we were involved in. One is the Windermere, which was an individual landmark, but wanted to just show the traditional use of the brick pattern, which is similar to what we're doing on the pilasters, on the vertical elements of the shaft of the building. A building that we recently completed on 2nd Avenue and 7th Street, also with a textured brick pattern and a series of brick patterns used to articulate the tripartite base, middle, and shaft of this building, similar to what we want to achieve at 277 Canal. And then a building we just completed on Grand and Mulberry, which uses brick to recall the tenements in the neighborhood. But also, one thing I'd like to point out is just the depth of these facades and our goal to have interplay of shadow and light on our facade, which will relate to the depth of the existing buildings and historic buildings in Soho and the surrounding context. Here's another view, rendered view of the crown of the building, giving you a better sense of depth and the play of light and shadow on that facade. Erin went through some of the restoration work, but here you can see the details and some of the call out for the materials that we're proposing, and this is included in your package. We have one for the base of the building, just details with heights and material call outs for the shaft, and then again at the crown of the building. Next one is the crown and the setback penthouse, which you'll see in the axon in the next view. With the screening material for all the mechanical material, which is above. And here we're just showing the materials of the base of the building and how those informed the decisions about how we articulated the pilasters, and then the use of some of those shapes and forms from the base of the building to suggest the forms of the proposed addition. This is what Erin had mentioned earlier. Landmarks requested that we provide a master plan for the storefront so that the shops could be divided into, or we could have one large shop or multiple shops, and then the plan for doors and windows could be implemented depending on the retail configuration.
And just, can we go back to that? Sorry, Claire. Just to point out the differences. So the specifics here, the signage is larger than you see in the renderings. The renderings haven't been updated to reflect the master plan signage. And so the proposed signage here is internally illuminated signage, and at 24 inches over the bay. And then there's allowances for bracket signs and vinyl decal signage. So just to sort of give a sort of comprehensive menu of all of the available signage options for retailers. And it's based on, again, varying schemes. So if there's one or two retailers versus potentially 4 or 5, and how that would work in terms of plan and signage outlines.
As mentioned earlier, the idea would be to work with the community to come up with an art program to enhance the subway entrance. And obviously, the base of the building is going to be restored, but we also want to create an entrance that relates to the community and has input from the community to create an art program, as opposed to just storefronts wrapping the entrance to the subway.
And I think, Morrison, or can I just chime in again? It's really interesting because the everything that Albert talked about their efforts along Canal to bring galleries and art installations, and of course that's all tethered to the long history of art creation in Soho, and in the building across the street that was approved by the commission, which hasn't been constructed yet, also designed by Morris at 419 Broadway. There, Morris and Albert collaborated with an artist to bring that a specific zinc patterning to the facade. So there's this sort of art infused ethos for both the projects, and trying to sort of weave it all together with this new use that embraces the rezoning. Sorry, go ahead.
And that really just ties into the idea that artists saved Soho so yeah, let's keep going. And so we have a series of streetscapes that are well, first, sorry, these are just two views looking north and south from above on Broadway, and then in the series of streetscapes that you see here, the top is the existing view, and we have the proposed below, showing the scale and the context of the existing building. That was on Broadway. This is on Canal, again, existing on the top and proposed below. And you can see the scale of those buildings with many of the other buildings at the same height. And then zooming out a little bit more, next, you can see on Broadway how those taller buildings on the corners reflect the height. On the top is the east side of Broadway, and the bottom, the west side of Broadway. But again, you see the rhythm of those taller buildings on corners and on the blocks north of this site, as well as south. And finish off with the render And happy to answer questions.
Okay, I have several things to do with just getting the record straight before we have subjective, as it were, comment.
Yep.
I think you've shown about the heights relative to the other Canal Street buildings. Is it correct to say, what did I write? That the existing facade is being restored and that the windows as well are essentially reproductions of the existing windows?
They are. They're going to be executed in aluminum rather than wood, though. But they
So
mimic
the only real change is the infill.
material.
We
Yeah.
spoke about separately.
But,
Okay, thank you.
but those will match the historic configuration.
Yes. Mhm.
Right, I have to have all that.
Okay.
The master plan, we'll get into it in detail later when we have questions. I'll do a couple up the end. The upper floor, the lettering. Are you saying that the letters are 24 inches high?
They are. Yes.
Okay. And could you go back to the master plan again? Just the Canal Street, I think, is a typical thing. Okay. Are those louvers at the top? I can't tell.
Yes. There's built into the plan is a louver across the entire transom to provide mechanical support for each
And
of the
that's
retail
consistent
spaces.
throughout design.
Throughout, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and the signs and okay. I'll have a couple things to say about the design, but this I'd like to get the other members of the committee to do that first. Eugene, if you could organize the committee members for their comments and so forth.
Sure thing. First question we have is from Valerie.
Yeah, I put this in the chat, but if for all of the applicants, if you could rename yourselves to your actual names instead of the cashier person, because this is going to be documented in the record with a transcript as well as uploaded on YouTube, this recording. So it doesn't do yourselves any favors to not have yourselves properly represented. Thanks.
Thank you, Valerie. Next with the hand up is Albert.
Another Albert, yes. Could you go back for several questions? Could you go back to the final slide, please?
Claire, we lost it.
With a representation of the entire facade,
The render.
the rendering. There you go. It appears to be the 13th floor is represented by something. Is that a fence?
Above the cornice.
Yes, above the cornice.
That is a screen wall, which you can see in the axon. Claire, can you pull that up? That shields the mechanical equipment.
Right. There's a mechanical screen atop the penthouse. So the penthouse is brick, which you can't see in that view. So what you're catching is the sort of the top of the screen.
Of that screen.
Exactly.
And is this screen, is that visible? As visible as it is on your rendering?
It is.
Yes. And what is it? What is the fabric? What is it made of?
It's aluminum, ribbed aluminum material, and the we use a light aluminum so that it blends with the sky and shields the equipment.
Okay. Going south, question is about the brick, the choice of textured brick, which is considerably different from the historic brick on the second and third floor. And I wondered about that choice. Is that to set it apart from the historic brick?
Yeah, our goal was to create our proposal is to complement the existing building, but not to copy it exactly, and to complement the brick in terms of the color, and also by using that pattern to create depth on the facade.
And there's terracotta is also different from the original, the terracotta on the extension.
Correct. The terracotta on the existing building is a buff color, and we're proposing more a red orange terracotta that is more similar to the brick color that we're proposing for the new construction.
Okay, next question. I'm glad to see the new presentation shows how important the theater was in the development of this building. And of course, the landmarks designation refers to the importance of new forms of mass entertainment, which the major theater was. And it had a very important role in the history of Soho. And of course, it ended up as a Chinese language theater, and began with silent features in 1927. Is there any vestige of the theater remaining?
No.
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 Okay.
It's
Unfortunately,
Bank of
no.
America. Yeah.
Bank of America.
Yes. Okay. I said that it was the film showing was Tom Mix and his Wonder Horse. I just cannot avoid remarking on that. One more question about the subway entrance. Could we see the slide, the renderings? Okay. Now the wall on the left is all those windows which are there now are to remain. The other two walls where the art goes will be solid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's all from me.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Robert. Next, we have Brian Pape. Brian?
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. Let's see. So have you worked with the MTA about any improvements for ADA access at the subway entrance?
Not at the moment, because we don't even know whether we have a project or not.
All right. And I saw some details for gas venting for the new building. And it's my understanding that new buildings aren't going to be issued any gas lines. Is that not correct?
I'm not sure, but I think we're going to do VRF which will probably be high efficiency electric mechanicals.
It looked
That's
like
where-
on the roof drawings, but I guess I saw some other details down at the base. Gas lines.
At this moment, nothing has been designed on the mechanical stage.
All right. And then finally, could you show a detail of the new terracotta at the, what was the original third floor roof line?
Yeah, there's a section which is shown. Enlarged on the left side, there's a section showing that new piece above. And it's drawn in elevation. How would you like to see that?
Well, I guess the point of my question is, how does that new piece of terracotta tie in and match or reflect the existing terracotta in the buff color?
Yeah, I think that's something that we still have to work through, but in the rendered view of the storefront, which is part of what Aaron had shown, I think you get a better sense of what that's going to look like, but that's a construction detail that we certainly will have to work through. But you can see it there.
Okay, so I guess at this point, the intention is to somehow mimic or reflect on the existing profiles.
That's correct.
And it's really meant to sort of be that sort of transition between the historic building, because can we go to the existing condition, maybe something that shows the cornice? It has the string course above the window head is quite pronounced, but then it just has a simple coping at the very top of the building. Yeah, maybe you could just zoom into that a little bit. So it's really just trying to sort of mark the end of that building, and then as the addition transitions above.
And the proposed would be more similar to that terracotta course that you see running
Right.
there.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there others, Eugene?
Yes, Brendan Fitzgerald.
Everybody, thank you very much for that presentation. A few comments and a question. The first question is more philosophical. It's about, is the addition, or is it dissimilar enough from the historic structure? And in the owner and architect's opinion.
We've done a number of vertical enlargements projects where we have made a bolder statement or more dissimilar solution. We think based on the research and other vertical enlargements, namely 525 and 565 Broadway, which were more in keeping with the all masonry building, we felt this was appropriate, and we tried to walk the line or between something that complemented and also contrasted with the base, and we feel that this is the appropriate approach.
I mean, I think we settled on masonry because for those reasons, right? It didn't feel obviously a glass facade didn't feel like the right complement to the existing building, and there's such a significant and long history of metal architecture in the district that you didn't want to sort of muddy that vocabulary in any way. And so we really felt that the masonry expansion was the right approach, and then started to play with those subtle distinctions in the brick texture as a way of differentiating between the historic building and the addition.
So it seems right now we've got the band of terracotta that's a lighter color as the main separator. And the
And then
texture- texture of the
the texture, and then sort of that transitional floor to sort of
Yep.
break the reading. You know, it was there. It is subtle, but it was kind of, and this is you know, if you know Morris's work, you know that he's sort of, his buildings tell a story, and they're pretty subtle in their contextual relationship to the broader district. And I think, you know, was trying to remain a quiet neighbor because the addition is substantial.
Yeah, I understand. I don't have an opinion. I was just wanting
Yeah.
to just bring that up.
We puzzled on this for a long time.
It's something that we talked about a
Yeah.
long time, and we've got a lot of different options and different ways to articulate the transition as well as the fabric of the new material.
Mhm. Okay, that sounds smart. Let's see. Now, in terms of comments on the presentation, I'm not sure that there's enough due diligence in the streetscape mock-up. So that is on page, let's see.
We have two. We have a detail of just the block, and then the blocks from Houston to Canal.
Okay, so let's just start with 48, if that's,
Okay.
if we're still numbered like that with the additions. So just in terms of visibility, I think that you had it right in one of your renderings. Albert mentioned that was the question about the fence. So, you know, that from the south sidewalk of Canal Street, that appears to be minimal. But we have to consider the north view from a block or a few blocks up. So your Google Maps image where you drew
That from above, correct?
Yeah.
oh no, the south view, which was like the street, you did a street view. Let's see.
There's
The one where it's sort of hovering mid. Your
46. That's 46.
Okay, thank you.
That one?
Oh, I have a different one.
Oh, sorry. We have another.
39 is actually a street view. This was the one that's linked to our community board presentation. So wait, is 46 that's a current, or does that show? That's current, right? As is?
No, it shows, it's showing the massing in there. It's the gray box.
I see.
In gray
Okay.
on the left and in gray on the right. So
Okay. That understood. So we are concerned with the streetscape and the views.
okay.
So I guess
Maybe-
one thing from 39 is that we don't have an indication of the penthouse. And I bring that up because the precedent is Jean Nouvel building. It's at
Sure.
463,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
what they did, so you know the building, you know that in terms of maintaining the cornice alignment, they made a false, they built something out so that when you're looking north from, say, Walker, White, you will be able to, the cornices will align, so they won't have a distraction from that. You know, I mean, this is an awesome view from down there. You know, it's for me, one of the most amazing views, you know, in the city. It's a canyon. So anyways, I wanted just to.
Can we go to slide 33 maybe? It might be helpful in
Yeah.
maybe thinking about this. I think that's the view down Broadway, right? So I totally, I get what you're saying. We actually, for the building across the street at 419 Broadway, there was something similar where we carried sort of an open portico to carry the cornice line. And then the penthouse was set back behind it. And here, I think we were really trying to pick up on that vocabulary of the expressed shafts and bulkheads at the rooftop. And so in this view, you sort of get that context of the brick bulkhead above the cornice line and setback. And so that's just part of how we were thinking about that penthouse, is really being something very secondary and almost utilitarian in configuration.
Yeah, I do see that. The more important view is from the, in terms of cornice alignment and the canyon-esque setting feeling, is looking north. So I guess my feelings on that is it would be nice to have.
32 might help.
That's Canal Street.
That's Canal. It's the
a
view.
little
It's the
less
main
than
render.
you
It's
can-
this one, but like looking back from farther south, you're meaning like
Yeah, like when you're crossing the street.
right,
like-
right.
So
It's yeah.
maybe if you could just like, well, you can do what you want, but 39, the previous 39 does have gives you a sense of that canyon to a certain extent. So a thought, and yeah, I do appreciate how you did that false cornice and setback in your other building. So that's a thought. Let's see. That is what I have. Just you're respecting that building. We appreciate that. I just wanted to make a note that even though LPC designated the cast iron historic district in 73, the National Historic Landmarks, the Department of the Interior designated the district as for all of its architecture. That wasn't just cast iron. So in their designation in 77 or 78, they included this building, this part of the block. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. Nonetheless, I think it's a good presentation.
If I could, I mean, we could talk about this further, but the National Register District, so they have very strict rules about boundaries and how you draw them, and they don't like you to leave corners out or to carve around buildings. So they have a very, like philosophically, a very different policy than Landmarks does, where Landmarks might, if something isn't either worthy of protection or isn't a site they want to regulate, they can carve around it. But the National Register has stricter limitations on boundary drawing. Not that that's why they included this, but it's one explanation why they wouldn't leave that corner out of the district.
Well, they actually split the block. So, and it is a contributing building in the National Historic Landmarks. So it's different than the National Register, even though it is included as a subset in the National Register. The National Landmarks, especially districts, are super, super rare.
Okay, could we move on from this to if there are other questions or comments you have about the project?
Great. I do not see any other questions from the committee members. There are 2 questions from the public.
I have one more. I'm sorry, I went back through my notes along. Is there any indication that from the building, how it was designed, or indeed how it was built within, that they foresaw any addition being made?
I am told, well, hold on a second. I'm told the structure is pretty beefed up, according to my structural engineer, and which might have contemplated an addition in the future. That's what I was told. I might be off.
It obviously wasn't beefed up enough for this project.
Definitely not. I wish.
It's more curiosity than
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If you'll go along with the first, are there members of the board here who wish to have a
There
question?
are members of the board. So Susan Wittenberg.
Hi, thank you. This is a quick question. I heard someone mention earlier the subway entrance, and I think the answer was it was too soon to say because we don't even know if we have the project. But I did just want to mention in conjunction with that, that it would be very important for the community if this were to go forward, that you would prioritize making the subway ADA accessible. It's really difficult now, and that would be, I know, of great concern. So even though it's early, I want to put that in the mix as things we care about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I could just make one more comment, Chanel.
Yes.
And this may have been, I'm not looking at your current presentation, so this may have changed, but there is a building in the streetscape analysis that doesn't exist. And I'm wondering, is that something that is ready to happen? It's the west side, northwest side of Broadway across the from your building. So I just want to note that. That's all.
That's another of UAL Albert's projects. It was approved. When was that approved? 2018, 2019,
Okay.
At Landmarks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Did we finish with the board members?
It appears we have. If so, then the first member, excuse me, the first member from the public with a question is Jeffrey Rowland. After that will be Pete Davies and Laura Tenenbaum. I will promote members of the public to be attendees.
Let me just say, we didn't go into the full explanation of a meeting. For the members of the public, you have 2 minutes to include comments and questions. And would the applicants be mindful of this time limit to be very concise in any answers? You don't have to comment on a comment if you don't want to, and just if there are questions to answer them fully, but briefly. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chanel. Okay, so Jeffrey Rowland, you are
Hello.
first.
Yes, I have a couple of questions and comments. By order of understanding why I'm going to make these questions, I will tell you, I live in a building that was next to a 2-story building that was allowed to be demolished by Landmarks, and the subsequent replacement was approved by this committee, 83 Thompson. And in the process of constructing, which they are currently doing, they have been using caissons that they are drilling with water drills. And as a consequence, the building I live in has tipped already about 1.5 inches towards the site. Now that is also true with the same company up at 1416 Fifth Avenue, where the damage happened to the 10 Fifth Avenue. So I am concerned about, from the construction point of view, about the building to the east of your building, as it is not as tall as many of the others. So therefore, the period of time that it might have been constructed in, probably they were driving pilings. The pilings were probably wood. And I'm concerned that you will be using the same kind of water drilling. And as you are on Canal Street, and I was on the Lispenard Swamp at Spring Street, and the 10 Fifth Avenue is on the Meta Creek, the subsoil is exceptionally porous and very muddy. And I'm wondering, what will you be doing during the demolition of that building and the construction of that building to protect and assure that the building to your east does not tip or in any way crack or move away from the building next to it so that it might have damage? After that, my comment is that other than the fact that this is taller by 2 stories or 3 stories than I think it should be, I think the design is beautiful. So that's my comment, but I am very concerned about construction methods and what steps you will take to prevent any damage from happening, rather than waiting until it does happen to try to correct the problem. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Should I respond to that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the comments. Second of all, I'm going to find some wood to knock on. We've been involved in dozens of projects in landmark districts and next to historic structures with great success in terms of not having any issues with adjacent structures. That being said, it is something that we will begin to monitor and document early on to ensure that it doesn't happen. I think we have the additional complexity of the MTA and moving through the approvals there. We did a project in NoHo, which was on top of the subway, and we had very tricky foundation challenges there, but we had no issues with any of the buildings next door. So I would say that this is something that we do, and it's part and parcel of the way we would approach the project. And it certainly is very sensitive, and we keep it in the foreground of the way that we would document the existing conditions, the proposed design, and following through with that.
And in addition, in our resolution, we have language for any building on this sort of thing that it's our recommendation for approval is conditional among following the regulations and being careful and not harming the subject building and the ones next door. Thank you. Okay, Eugene, the next person.
Great. Our next question is from Pete Davies. Pete, you can unmute.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. And Morris, you do very handsome work. This is, but I do have some concerns and some questions. First, thank God for Margot Gale for making sure that the extension of the district included this corner. So it is a protected and has an overview from landmarks. It's already been raised about the subway accessibility. I think that is paramount here. I'm somewhat concerned about the visibility from points north. Took a walk yesterday along Crosby and Lafayette. The slot, especially over 33 Howard, which is a 3-story building at the back of this lot, which is probably one of the more vulnerable neighboring buildings. This building is surrounded by 150-year-old buildings on all sides, if not older. So that, as Mr. Rowland pointed out, that is of great concern, considering it is the old stream bed that went here. This is a fascinating site because of a number of reasons. One is the geologic, which is the what the land was before it was built on, makes it a very vulnerable area. Second is architectural, and that is what I mentioned about the stress on the neighboring structures. And it also does raise the question for a contributing building, is it appropriate to quadruple the height of a contributing building in the district, where that, you know, that's a philosophical question, but it is something I think that needs to be addressed. Then there's the transportation aspect, which is, this is a choke point. This is a crazy intersection. We all know this. So will the subway station be closed at this entrance during construction? Then I just want to address the signage. A lot of what we're seeing right now, we didn't see until, I didn't see it until 5 o'clock this afternoon, because nothing about the master plan was included in what was posted at CB2 until the very last minute. But what you're asking for is 24-inch letters internally illuminated, both of which 18 inches is the standard max height for lettering of signage, and internal illumination is just a no-go. That is something that I'm here representing Broadway Residents Coalition, residents who live up and down Broadway in this area. We have always said there's no need for internally illuminated.
Would you come to a conclusion, please, Pete?
I'm sorry?
Would you just come to a conclusion about?
Sure, I can. This is the first project since the rezoning. So I would just ask for a little bit leeway for the folks who live here. to chime in on what will set the precedent for the neighborhood. And I know others have things they want to bring to your attention. So, the means of egress. Currently, there is a doorway at the northernmost bay on Broadway that leads to the staircase. That's the second means of egress, I guess. That is shown now as a retail space. Your floor plan shows a staircase going into the retail space, but how is that maintained as a means of egress? Right now, the only egress is through the main on canal. So I guess that's my time's up for now.
Okay, would you answer the question, please?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking someone from the applicant to answer the question.
Okay.
About
I also sent into the committee a presentation that included the easement, a drawing of the easement that's filed at DOB for this property that shows there is space that's already in the easement. Oh, and one more thing, I got to raise this. This is being termed a vertical enlargement, numerous times vertical extension, but it's filed at DOB as a new building. And I'm hoping that you can address the difference and why it's being described by Landmarks and CB2 and the presenters as a vertical enlargement when the filing at DOB is for a new building. Thank you very much.
Okay, could you answer the two questions, please?
Morris, that's the technical alt versus NB issue and the egress, right?
Yeah, I took notes, but there were so many points here. I was trying to.
Okay, the specific questions were about the elimination of one.
I think the term for the Landmarks Commission is that this is a vertical enlargement, but it is technically would have to, since there would be a change of use, would have to be a new building at DOB. And I believe that's why it was termed a new building. It would need a new C of O for the residential use. So hopefully that answers that question. I could get a more complete answer for you. But that's what I think the way we were advised to submit this by our expediter.
That seems reasonable.
And then I believe that staircase is shown as the egress on the north side of the ground floor, goes to the basement and then comes up on the on the ground floor plan. We have two stairs shown, one which exits that way. Yes, exactly. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Eugene?
Yes. The next question is from the public, Laura Tenenbaum. Laura, you can activate your camera if you wish, and also.
I'm doing it. There I am. Yeah, I have a number of things. I'll try to go quickly for your sake, Chenault. Again, accessibility for the subway is vital.
Okay.
I have a question about the blank walls, which is the walls on the wall on the east side of the building and the wall on the north side of the building that's towards the west. Not in the part that's the courtyard that has the windows, but the blank walls. I hope there's no intention of putting signage up there, advertising signage. And I would ask the committee to put that in their resolution that there should not be advertising signage there.
That was not in our plans.
Okay, but it would be something that would really change the sense of it's inappropriate for a residential building anyway, but that's an issue. I also wanted to ask, is there any intention, or could you commit to not going for a variance application to change the use of the building on the basis of being over a subway or an odd lot size or anything along those lines after you get the landmarks approval for the envelope? Next,
So,
I want to also, I'll go on, and then the next thing is, as Pete said, the illuminated signage is just a no-no for our community. It's something that landmarks only very recently started in, on certain levels approving. We've seen it a little bit here and a little bit there. It's sneaking in, but we wanted to stop appearing in Soho. It's not appropriate for our buildings, and the illuminated signage is just absolutely a no-no as far as I'm concerned. I'm coming towards the end. I want to talk about the top and the penthouse. I really do like the presentation of the different levels of the building until you get to the top. I mean, you talked about the level C, the crown, and the major cornice, and right above that, you have the penthouse. And if the penthouse weren't there, we wouldn't be seeing this edging of the mechanicals along the mechanicals. It's a story too far, I feel. And I think it in a lot of the renderings, it's just breaks the feel of the building and the way it fits into the rest of the streetscape. And I think I'm pretty much through now, everything that I had to say or ask about. The subway entrance does worry me a little bit. I love the idea of subway art. I'm a friend of someone who has art in the subway, and it's beautiful. It's going to be graffitied, and I just want you to think of a way to protect that. And because that's going to happen because of the location. So just putting that out there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Could you speak about the question on the variance?
So sorry, I was interrupting you, and I'm sorry about that previously, but our intention is to have residential there, which is part of the new zoning, and it would require, as part of the approval, for the affordable housing component, which we talked about. But Albert, I don't know.
Let me say this. It's hard enough to go. It's hard enough to go through this process. Do you think I want to go through another process?
Hey, it pays off. They used to say 50% return, you know.
I thought we were a gentle process here.
Yeah.
So sorry, what was the worry?
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing it. We're not doing a variance. Absolutely not. Don't worry about it.
No. And Albert has such a long history and ongoing relationship with the Landmarks Commission based on just the quantity of buildings he owns in the district. It would, it wouldn't be something that would be reasonable for anyone's relationship to bait and switch. It's not in the ethos of the project. Yeah.
Thank you. Eugene, next person, or there is a next person.
I believe that is all of the questions. Oh wait, there's one more question from the public. Sachi, I am going to promote you to a panelist where you will rejoin the conference, and then feel free to turn your camera on and ask your question. You don't need to turn your camera on, but you can.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. My name is Sachi. I am on the board of a pro-housing advocacy group in New York and called Open New York. And I just wanted to, this is more of a comment and just wanted to say how impressed I am with the plan, that the greater New York City region could really use more housing. We have a housing affordability crisis, and we really do need to be building housing at all levels of affordability. So I think that what's proposed here in terms of the density, the number of affordable units is really impressive, and just want to commend the group that's putting the plan together and urge the community board to include as many units of housing as possible, especially since this is such a transit rich and history rich community within New York City. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has everyone spoken except my questions? I want everyone else to speak first.
I don't see any other questions.
Can we have an answer to the question of visibility from, say, Crosby Street and others? That had been a question that Pete had asked. Okay.
Claire, do we have I think there might be a gray box rendering from that view
I
from
don't
Crosby
have,
or Howard.
let me dig for it. Give me a sec.
Are you all looking? Is that what the sign
Yeah,
is?
sorry.
I think
we're
so,
looking.
but if you want to ask
Okay.
your questions, maybe we can. Yeah.
I've put it up. Do you see the screen or no?
No.
Maybe you
Okay,
have to reshare.
you share. Let's try this.
No. Oh, there.
It's going to be a rental. Somebody asked a question. This is going to be a rental, not a condo.
Mhm.
Do you guys see the screen now?
We
The-
do. Thanks, Claire. Yeah. So the yellow in the view on the right is the montaged massing into the. So there's that one, the sight line nearing the corner of Crosby and Howard.
The key plan is below.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Eugene, would you look around for the other presenter that we didn't see before? Meanwhile, would you give the view of the sign, the signs and the rendering of the signs? Whatever we saw that shows the close-up.
This one.
There we go. Okay. I believe that the size of the sign is out of proportion to what we would normally expect to see, as was mentioned. Likewise, the sort of standardized landmark approved kind of sign, which is, I don't know how it's codified, but it's approved over and over and is recommended by the commission, is rather than internally lit, halo lit. That is to say, solid letters with lighting traced behind each letter. And that both of those things are something we generally recommend. And we'll discuss at the time of the making the resolution.
And we'll take all that into consideration.
Thank you very much. Oh, I wasn't timing myself. I've hit the wrong button. Thank you very much. It was the history lesson was wonderful. I didn't mean to put it off. I just meant to be sure you got to the real thing.
And it was such an important part of the way we approached the project. So thank you.
Yes, we appreciate the care as well as the philosophy behind it. Makes us make a better decision. Thank you. Eugene, how are you doing with the?
Not so well. So I would like to see if I am looking for a John Carbone. If anyone here is for 16 Fifth Avenue, please use the raise hand function. But Chenault, I do not see anyone logged in with that name.
Okay, we've done the best we can. You're not here. So we will now have the business session. As we started, anyone can stay, and discussion is only among the committee members. And to start the business session, does anyone from the board have final comments for the business session? I see Eugene's eyes boring into the screen to see.
Sorry, I'm just busy moving everyone over to the attendee list.
Oh, okay. Do you see anyone, anyone from the board, raise your hand if you're not able to speak and want to. Say when.
It's overwhelming.
Okay. Or underwhelming. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we had a lot of comments from the committee. I didn't detect any specific thing that anyone wanted to recommend a change or anything of that sort, except for my comments about the signage. Is there anything that anybody that's basically a complaint that's worthy of being changed?
No.
I think we should consider the cornices. I think we should bring that up, and we also should request
Okay,
more
what do you want to say about them?
to consider the alignment, as LPC has always considered the alignment from the view north up Broadway. So
And I don't understand what you're saying, but how, what?
well, right now, we have a setback that will distract from that view. And it'll be the first one. From the view below Canal, Lisbonard on. And that's an important part of the setting of Broadway, is that cornices it's flat except for the mechanicals. And I think that's something that we should comment on, maintaining the setting and the consider the cornices like the Jean Nouvel building.
Is it the height? I just don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, let's put it this way: flatness. So
You would like to
flatness,
see more profiles in the cornice? Is that what you're more pronounced profile?
it's the setback. My concern is the visible setback of the top story.
Which you mean when you mean the penthouse?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have comment or agreement about that?
Yes, I would comment that when I observed the renderings and the various depictions of it, I thought that the setback for the penthouse read as like a bulkhead for elevator or stair in the older buildings along those street fronts. And so that's the way I read it. So it seemed appropriate.
What is presented seems appropriate.
Yes.
Okay.
I would, if to that.
Okay,
point-
let anybody talk to the other. Let anybody comment on it. Then we'll. Does anybody else have any opinion about the penthouse? Okay, Brian, you want to say more?
Yeah, then I would request that we have better images, because right now we cannot see that. what that profile will be like. So the street view, it's just not enough for the public to understand what that profile will be.
Okay, is there agreement with that?
Sure.
Okay, I think there's not any agreement on it, so it, we won't include it in the resolution then. To the question that I raised about the lettering in both its size and its method of illumination, this is our standard. Size is subjective, but I would say 18 rather than 24 inches would bring it into the sort of thing that we've always approved or generally approved. And the question of illumination from the halo illumination. Is there any disagreement with including that as a?
Well, I look at difference between 18 and 24 inch height, and for that scale of building and that scale of the lintel or the amount of masonry between floors did not seem to be out of scale, but it is how they're designed. I would say that it's definitely should not be internally illuminated, halo or backlit sort of thing. That is more appropriate. But I think that if this was a sign that was going to be a box sign of some kind, so that it was totally 24 inches height all the way across for whatever size of sign that they end up proposing, then that would be too much. But if it's more of a script or a uppercase, lowercase, or something like that, where the 24 inch is the maximum, but not every sign part is the same height, then I think it would be appropriate. So I think that, again,
it's hard to do these things as master plans, because when we get a proposal, we really, really look at it carefully. And we say, because that has lowercase and one uppercase, it generally doesn't, or so, but the fear is we're sort of locking in what the maximum is, which is one of these signs over every single window all the way around. And it makes it hard for us to make a global decision where one is really not. It's much easier to do the infill than the signs in general. Anyone else have comments?
Valerie?
Somebody? Anybody?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to consider that this is going to set a precedent that what we accept here for that is going to end up in the next deck that we have for the next building as a precedent. So I would just ask the committee to think about on those big letters and the signage.
I would add to that, we're stuck with it on this building, whatever we might say about another building. We've set a precedent for whatever might happen over and over on this building without its coming back.
Apart from the lighting, are we going to reduce the size of
Would
the
you be
letters?
comfortable if we just suggested they'd be smaller rather than a dimension, Brian?
Not a specific
I would
number of
agree.
inches.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So is there agreement to reduced in size and halo illumination?
Sure.
Yes.
I would agree.
Yes.
Otherwise, we are approving it as submitted. Correct?
We are approving every detail. Yes.
I would like to just bring up one more time that we don't have enough information for the streetscape. We don't have enough information. of the
Other
view.
people didn't agree, so
I'm just bringing it up again.
you can't portion out what you vote on. So, if that makes you not vote in favor of the resolution, then it will have to be that way. But that's just we write the resolutions according to what the majority view is, and then one can disagree or agree.
Yeah, no, I do understand that. I'm just saying that we're making that decision without enough information.
Okay. Any other comments at all on it?
Well,
Yeah.
I did bring up 3 possible objections, and they answered all of them. I assume that nobody was concerned about my objections.
Will you repeat them?
The fence, whatever that is on the roof, that indicates there is a 13th floor that is highly visible. I objected to their choice of ornamental brick. That's not the right word, but anyway, brick that was chosen to show the difference between the new and the old. And I think that I objected to the windows in the subway entrance. That may be it. And of course, the history of the theater.
Are you just asking that the fencing be less prominent, or I'm not? It's all a color thing.
What was your question?
Is it the color of it that troubles you, or the fact of it?
Of the new brick, what would they call it? I have a note somewhere.
It's the masking for the mechanicals. That's what is being illustrated.
Oh, up on the roof? No, I'm not talking about the roof. I'm talking about the entire facade, where they are using an ornamental brick rather than the historic brick of the first, the second and third floor.
Their explanation was they were trying to differentiate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Reflect and be in harmony with. Anyone else troubled by the?
No, I would have to agree with their reasoning that what they've chosen to do is to use a similar material and a similar color, but treat it in a way that it's obviously not old. It's obviously not.
Yes. They said that they chose. It's textured is their word. It's textured brick that they are using on the extension, and they said that they had chosen it deliberately.
Yes.
Show the difference between the old and the new. So no, I'm not going to vote against anything because of these objections. Because I know Chenault would have to list all of our names if I did.
Are there any other requests for inclusions in the resolution?
Could I just make sure that we're also including the comment about the subway access for?
Yes, I'll have that in the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Zach.
Oh, I've been here.
Any other comments, questions? Presumably the next meeting, I assume Mark sent the endless email to everybody about coming meetings being hybrid and how it works. Did everyone get that?
Yes.
No,
Okay, I'll ask him to send it to the whole board because it includes, as well as the public members who sometimes get left out of these full board. meetings.
yes.
Thanks. I'll make sure the public members get it. Yep.
Public members.
I think Brendan still has his hand up. Brendan, are you trying to speak? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. So to Albert's point about the roof, just to throw this out there again, because I really think it might be important, is that, he wasn't able to understand what that was. And that was from, across the street. When we start moving, 100, 200, 300, 400 meters, it becomes very evident that structure. So I just wanted to mention that. So that's one comment. I can have another comment, but I can wait.
Sorry. You're finished?
I have one more comment, but I
Okay,
can
please.
wait on it because it's different idea. Shall I?
I have to respond to that.
Yeah.
Brendan's comment. So to be clear, we're saying that, and this is to everyone, we're saying it's okay that there's mechanicals visible from the roof. Is that what I'm gathering here?
Mechanicals on the roof are fine. It's the addition. It's the additional storage
Penthouse?
that we don't know what we haven't seen that profile in the streetscape mock-ups. So what they have now is just vertical, perspectives, not from the street, but from the sky. And then we have the elevations of all the buildings on Broadway. So we really don't have, the public doesn't have enough of an idea of what that streetscape will be. So
Sorry, go ahead.
that's it.
Is there anything that we can verbalize in the resolution that would at least capture that we're making this, that we are limited in the information that was provided, or that view is missing, that elevation? Is that something that, like, notwithstanding, I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I just really want to thank you, Brendan, for continuing to push this, because I feel as though we're throwing a softball here, guys. So thank you, Brendan and Albert, for and Brian as well. I feel like this is like a really important, it's one of the first buildings, and I just want to make sure that we're having the right discussion. And I know not everyone on the committee is here, so I just wanted to, I'm just trying to, that's why I keep asking more questions and trying to make sure that we're facilitating the right discussion. Thanks.
So just a question to Brendan. You mentioned the streetscape view of it. I'm looking at slide 7 in the proposal. This is looking, I mean, it's modeled obviously, but looking diagonally across the street. What kind of view are you looking for? And yeah, from diagonally across the street, there is a sliver of that mechanical cladding visible, for sure.
Mhm.
What other kind of views would you want to see?
Well, what they had from the street, like when a mock-up is done for an addition, a rooftop addition, this, at least to have it blocked out. And we don't have that at all in this presentation. And the one slide that did have that for looking north, in the previous submittal did have that that massing, but it showed a flat roof.
What can we say about the situation that we're confronted with? We don't have it, and we need to say something.
Sure.
Can we say that it's every step's taken to make it minimally visible, something of that sort?
No,
but can we push that? It's just incomplete. I mean, I think that's what you're pushing for, right?
I would say that the public it could be something like we requested the public has a better understanding of the streetscape and what the 13th floor profile will be from specifically the view from the south.
So it's the view, it's the rooftop from the view from the south.
Correct. And then if, if we wanted make reference to another building that has solved that, I think, quite well, it's 463 Broadway, where they have basically put a structure that squares it off. So,
Okay, if we get something that says what we say in narrative form, then it's fine. Let me just highlight.
Where, can I ask a question? Where, at one point in the presentation, they did show the massing from a certain street corner. I think it was on, I think, Crosby, looking southeast or southwest.
Yeah.
they have them.
Street.
They're
Which
just not in
slide
the
is in
presentation.
the, yeah, it's just not in the application there, right? It's,
Yeah. And they removed it from in the most recent one. So at 3 o'clock, they had a streetscape view from.
Yeah. I feel like that's a little
Not here.
disingenuous. I mean, I live 2 blocks from there. And I mean, it's definitely going to be much more visible than they're claiming it is.
Yeah. We should see it. That's all. The public should be able to see more of the streetscape from street level, and we don't have any of that now.
I'd like to point out that this application was initially supposed to come to us last month, where had they presented on their original date, we would have had an opportunity for them to come back this month. So just kind of pointing that out.
Procedural, this 5 o'clock. I don't know how we can handle this. I just think it's crazy that we.
It's scheduled for the Landmarks Commission, and this is our last thing. It's a question of how we word. It's not a question of how we change what is.
Yeah, this is moving forward. Can't we just put a strict, 1 week full completion of the and then no substitutions after that 1 week. Anyways, that's for another discussion. That's,
Okay, I've got it that we felt that the presentation was deficient in illustrating the visibility of the rooftop addition, especially from south on Broadway.
Yeah.
Looking south. Well, not just on Broadway, but it's also from Crosby.
Yeah, everywhere. There is nothing from the street at all in this presentation.
There's none of the typical elevation, from the, X many blocks away.
Yeah.
Right, and normally we're dealing with one of these things on top of a building that exists, so there's a mock-up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the where the real difference comes. Anything else? Anybody else?
I have an idea about following up on Valerie's idea of the precedent. So for Broadway, when you look at the elevation and you see all those short buildings, so those are all going to get filled in. So my question to the committee is, because this parcel is part of the National Historic Landmarks designation from 78, would we like to bring them into the conversation? So what that would mean is, would we like to write a letter to them saying, this is, just to keep you aware, this is the first development in this rezoning I was in touch with them during the rezoning, and they felt they weren't able to comment because there were no definitive plan, no plans of specific buildings to comment on. However, they did say if they were asked by an entity that they would comment. So that said, is there any interest from the committee in bringing the National Park Service and the players on the federal level in at least to monitor? I am not objecting to this building, but I would like to keep them involved in the conversation as we move forward.
How would that work, Brendan? What are you envisioning?
What the letter, I mean, first we'd have to get full board approval. The letter would be, here is our first submittal regarding the rezoning of the National Historic Landmark District. We just wanted to keep you informed as we move forward. We may include a drawing. I'm not sure if we can use their elevation or not, or we have to make one and just state that these we believe that these will all be filled in. Would you like to be involved?
Why don't you circulate among the committee a sample of what you feel would be appropriate to say, and then we can put it on the next meeting.
Or we could bring it up at exec.
Well, it needs to come from the committee first, so it's going to be. So if we do it at the next committee meeting, then we can go forward with it.
Yes. When do I have to get something in?
Okay, good. Thank you all. And I don't know why we didn't have other applications this month. It's normally a month that we have a fair number. So it may very well stack up next month. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chanel.
Thank you, Chanel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, all.